Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our continuing discussion of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Here we're in the middle of May. For today, I wanted to kind of just talk about some kind of, I'll just call it random topics related to Asian American and Pacific Islanders, which I thought was really interesting. A lot of it revolved around work, but again, just a little bit of kind of just increasing our knowledge base about about this very, very important group and how they have contributed to American society. So. Just a couple some fun facts for you. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders tend to be more satisfied than average Americans with their lives, with their finances, and with the direction of the country. They've done the Pew Research Center did some studies on this and found that they are actually one of the most satisfied groups in all of the country. More than 86% of Asian Americans are high school graduates, which is far and above larger than any other group in the country. Asians have the highest proportion of college graduates of any race or ethnic group in the country. 49%, so basically half of the Asian Americans have a bachelor's degree, and 50% have a bachelor's degree or higher, compared with just 28.5% for all Americans. Only about 10% of all Americans have a PhD, an MD, or a JD, but over 21% of Asians actually have an advanced degree, such as a master's, MD, JD, things along those lines. So, and actually, Asian American households have the highest median income of any ethnic or race group in the country at $67,000 a year. The next closest are white households at $58,000, followed by Hispanic households at $40,900, and Black households at $34,500. So again, Asian Americans have the highest median income in the country. But all this comes with a catch. For example, while as a whole, Asian American families have higher median incomes than white families, this is because a typical Asian American family has more members who are working than the typical white family, for example. And then earnings inequality is higher for Asian American and Pacific Islander workers than it is for workers from any other ethnic groups. And advancement in education is not a guarantee of employment for success for Asian workers either. Did you know that only 1.5% of Fortune 500 CEOs and only 1% of corporate board members are Asian, which are all those are all the lowest of any other ethnic group in the country. So again, just because this group has a high percentage of bachelor's, masters, and JDs and doctorates, especially in corporate America, Asian Americans are still very low represented, especially in managerial positions. And again, kind of talking about the wage gap, so to speak. Asian American and Pacific Islander women are unique because of the wide differences among their subpopulations. For example, the most common occupations among Indian women are software developers and physicians, which are two typically high-wage occupations, while the top occupations among Vietnamese women are manicurists and hairdressers, which are typically lower-wage occupations. And there's some driving factors, behind these, which can include cultural differences in immigration patterns, generational wealth, and there's always biases around gender, race, ethnicity, things like that. This has led to a significant disparity in median earnings among Asian American and Pacific Islander women by subpopulation. For example, while Indian women working full-time year-round had on average a median annual earnings of about $70,000 over the last 5 years as measured, that was just $36,000 for Vietnamese women, so basically almost half. So again, just because, I think it's really critical that we look at within Asian American culture, there are so many different subgroups, people from China, India, Japan, the Philippines, Malaysia, Laos, Indonesia. So it's impossible to lump everybody into one group saying, okay, you're all the same, because there are so many differences within these groups. And I think it's important. And the data shows us that all the differences in these aspects. So I looked at what are the kind of the top 10 occupations in America for Asian American and Pacific Islanders, kind of as measured as a percentage of the population, and found that the top occupations are software developers and system software, registered nurses, computer scientists, and like web developers, and accountants and auditors are the most common occupations for Asian American and Pacific Islanders. And each one of those jobs, and then if you actually add in physicians, surgeons, and post-secondary teachers, those occupations, there are more Asians in those jobs per capita than any other ethnic group in the country. So again, not only is it a very well-educated group, it's also a group that likes to give back, that really, has a dedication to helping other people. So again, it's so important to really recognize the contributions that Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have had on our country. So kind of to sum up today's DEI talk, some other information that I actually found really interesting and that really kind of made me smile, which I thought was just so interesting. Did you know that compared to other Americans, Asian Americans are more likely to be married than any other group. On average, for Americans over the age of 50, about 60% of Americans over the age of 50 are married. Where in the Asian American community, it's actually closer to 75%. And what I really found interesting was the high marriage rate. They've done research on this, and they can't definitively prove this, but I think it's really interesting that the high marriage rate may be due to the fact that Filipinos, who are the second largest Asian group in the U.S. behind only Chinese, come from the only country in the world where divorce is illegal. So only the Philippines is the only country in the world where divorce is illegal. So a large percentage of Filipinos who immigrate to the United States don't, their country prohibited divorce, so they stay married longer, which again, just really, really fascinating. I guess kind of to summarize, Asian Americans are more environmentally friendly compared to any other group in the country. So for example, 82% of Asian American groups recycle glass, plastic, and paper versus only 62% of the general population. 33% drive or use alternative transportation versus 26% of the rest of the population. 50% use cloth or recyclable shopping bags versus only 41% of the regular population. And 24% buy organic food versus only 15% of the regular American population. So again, just a plethora of kind of interesting facts that I found, in learning more about Asian American and Pacific Islander Awareness Month. Again, I encourage you, in your spare time to just Google Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month and just kind of read an article or two. That's kind of how I got started, just to learn more about these cultures, and more importantly, to realize how much impact Asian Americans have really had on our history and our culture here in the U.S. So, hope everyone's doing well. We'll continue our discussion next week, but I hope everybody has a great weekend. Should be nice and beautiful this weekend. So, hope everybody's doing well. Take care.